1 verse 20, it says, so they went to the lawyers. Ahasuerus went to his lawyers, and his lawyers said, take away Vashti's kingdom and give it to somebody else who's better than her. V'nishma piskama melech, and the word of the king was heard. Asher yaseh b'kol machuso ki rabahi. He said, if the king will do this, and the word of the king will be heard, v'kol anashim yitnu yikar levalehen migadol v'akatan, and everybody will recognize that the women have to give honor to their husbands, whether they're small or big. Now, this is actually not a simple thing. You could read this as a joke, like we make a decree that all the women have to honor their husband. Ha ha ha. Like that sounds like a man's dream. But really, there could have been a dispute going on in the kingdom. Who's in charge when there's a marriage? Who basically is the one who's is it a patriarchal society or a matriarchal society? And they could have just been deciding that. Yes, Akiva, you had a question.
Also because Vashti had more royal blood through Nebuchadnezzar than Ahasuerus.
Well, so that's what I was suggesting yesterday, that maybe Vashti, technically speaking, had more authority or more of a claim than Ahasuerus to royalty. So it's possible that was going on. And the matter was good in the eyes of the king, and the princes. And so he listened to his lawyers, he listened to Memuchan. What does Rashi say here? There's nothing on it yet. Okay, verse 21. Verse 22. So he sent messengers out to all the kingdom. He says that every word he ruled that the man was in charge of his household, and he spoke in the language of his people. Rashi says, what does that mean? He spoke in the language of his people. He forced his wife to learn his tongue. If she's of a different language. It seems so strange. What's going on here? You need a whole decree of the king, and then you have to force the wife to learn your language? What's going on here? So if we adopt the theory that Vashti and Ahasuerus was really the merging of two completely separate kingdoms, then the lawyers were in a dispute. And therefore, whoever controls the language is going to be controlling the lawyers. And so therefore, it was necessary to say that it follows the language of the king, of the man. And that's going to be that's essential in determining that Ahasuerus' lawyers will be victorious in court over Vashti's lawyers. Did I cut you off, Rabbi Yosef?
No, just that I don't remember if it's the Gemara or Midrash that says that that the reason why Esther wrote about this first letter was that way when the second letter came that they're allowed to kill all the Jews, they'll say this is as stupid as the previous as the previous letter. That he sent us a letter telling us that I am the man. So of course I'm the man. So I don't remember if it's the Gemara.
Right, the Gemara does say, the Gemara says that, but I think that Gemara is obviously beautiful, but the Gemara is also skipping over this point, which is that there was a real dispute as to which kingdom was going to be in control. To this day, we have fights over which language is primary. In America, like even today, like the president's outlawing Spanish, and it's a very big thing because if it's not in your language, you're at a huge disadvantage.
They outlawed the Russian for the Ukrainians, and most Ukrainians actually spoke Russian until the decree.
Yeah, when I went to Ukraine, I went with somebody who spoke fluent Russian, but they refused to speak to us in Russian. The Ukrainians don't like the Russians. They'll never give in to them. Well,
what about the ones on the east? They are the ones who speak Russian the most, right?
The east.
Right.
Do they like?
I was never around,
They used to like Russians because they spoke Russian, but now
I agree.
I
I didn't go to that part of Ukraine. I went to Lviv.
That part's under Russian control, right? And the
Eastern, not Eastern.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what's going on there?
We know what's going on.
No, I'm saying we don't know what the people like, there's a lot of misinformation. Like when I was in Lviv, this was 5 years ago, and there were swastikas all around the town, and in Rovna also. I saw there were a lot of swastikas up, and so I said to the mayor of Lviv, why is your town filled with swastikas? And he says, oh, it's from the Russian propagandists. They put up the swastikas in our town to make us look bad, which is not really a plausible explanation. So
Things have changed since 5 years ago.
yeah, of course, obviously things changed since 5 minutes ago. So now we're up to chapter 2.
don't become non-Nazis in 5 years, right?
Well, let's just go on. After these matters. Hey, Kobe, we're in chapter 2 of the book of Esther. What page is that? Akiva, tell us, Kobe.
1374.
Yeah.
1374.
After these matters, when the king's anger abated, all of a sudden, he remembered what he did to Vashti and what he did and that which he decreed. What did he mean remembered? Rashi says he remembered her beauty and he was sad. But that's a little bit hard to completely accept Rashi's explanation, because this is a king who could have any woman and he literally took any woman he wanted. He was a serial rapist. So all of a sudden, it's hard for him to imagine that what he was upset about was Vashti's beauty missing. But I think what's going on here is he all of a sudden realized he has a huge political problem. He took away his queen. He needs a queen, and now what's he going to do? He has this political problem that he disenfranchised half the kingdom. So what's he going to do? So his attendant said, so he says, find so his attendant said to him, no problem, get a new queen. Search out beautiful maidens, and we'll get a new queen. And we need somebody who looks good, charismatic, who can fill the role. Anybody could do that role. No problem. The king should appoint officers in all the provinces of his king. And he'll gather up all the virgin maidens who are beautiful. El Shushan Abira to Shushan. El Beit HaNashim to the house of the women. Ayad Hega Esris HaMelech Shomer Nashim. Next, that was under Hega, who was the chief Sris, the chief eunuch, who was the guardian of the woman. V'nason Tamru Kehen. And you could read this as, just a beauty contest. But it's not that simple. First of all, Rashi says, appoint officers, because every officer knows who's the beautiful woman in his kingdom. But basically, he's trying to find a queen. And this is a way to unify the kingdom as well, because he's saying the queen can come from any province. Not just from Shushan. We're gonna appoint a regular woman to be the queen, not just like some royal blood. Everybody's getting very excited about maybe the queen will come from my province. The queen will come from my province. So it's a tried and true method of propaganda to do that. And he says, and each one will get Tamru Kehen. This is our, like perfume. Rashi says, Shemen Arev Umine Simanim Upsamen Ametaran Madin Esabazar. Like they'll work their cosmetics. And then the advisor said, whoever's good in the eyes of the king will rule in place of Vashti. And the matter was good in the eyes of the king, and he did that. So basically, he realizes he has to replace the queen. But he has a problem. If he just replaces the queen with another queen, he could get the same problem he had with Vashti. If the queen says she's in control, that there was this legal fight. He has a political problem. So now we introduce the solution. Let's see what the solution says. Ish Yehudi, Haya B'Shushan Abira. There was a Ish Yehudi. What does it mean, Yehudi? That he was presumably from the tribe of Judah. Yehudi nowadays means a Jewish man. But in those days, that's not what it meant. It meant he was from Judea. Ish Yehudi, Haya B'Shushan Abira. So it was a man from Judea. And so that means even though he was in Shushan, he still called himself the Judean. He still remembered where he was from. He hadn't assimilated completely. But Ushmo Mordechai, but his name was Mordechai. Mordechai is an indication of assimilation. It's a Persian name. It's the name of a Persian god. So, hello, Yoav, how you doing? Good. And he was in Shushan. What page are we on, Akiva? Tell Yoav what page we're on?
76.
What?
1376.
We're studying the book of Esther, Yoav. So, there's an enigma. There's a conundrum. He was in Shushan. Well, yeah, but what book do you have, Yoav?
I have the wrong one.
No, you got the wrong one. So he was from Judea in Shushan, but his name was Mordechai, but he was the son of Yair, which is his father has a Jewish name, which means he will illuminate. And we know at the end it says, like Yehudim Torah, for the Jews there was light. The son of Shimi, the son of Kish. Who else was Kish? Shaul ben Kish. So he Ishimini. And on the other hand, he's called a Benjaminite. So on the one hand, he's called a Judean, but he's also called a Benjaminite. So how do we deal with this problem? Rashi tells us he was called the Ish Yehudi because he was exiled with the exile of Judah. What were the exiles of Judah? So, what? Right. So Nebuchadnezzar, when he took over, he did a couple of exiles. There was the exile of Tzidkiyahu, which was the last exile, where all the remaining people were exiled. And then there was the exile of Yechaniah, which was 11 years prior to that, where the intelligentsia and the wealthy people were exiled. So he was exiled. We'll see who he was exiled with. But Rashi says he was exiled, and whoever was exiled with the kings of Judah were called Yehudim by the Jews, even if they were from a different tribe. So Rashi's saying he wasn't necessarily from the tribe of Judah. He was really a Benjaminite, but because he was exiled with that exile from Judea, that's why he was called amongst that. Like when I went to Cuba with Jeffrey over here, when I went with Jeffrey to Cuba 20 years ago. Remember that trip, Jeff? Very powerful trip.
My son, it's a great trip.
It was a beautiful trip. And when we went there, I was looking for my father's home. Were you with me? We knocked on the door and we were looking for the mezuzah that my father's building that he lived in. He went there when he ran away from Hitler. And the woman, and we said, I'm looking for my father. He came here. She goes, oh, he was one of the Polacos. They called all the Jews the Polish. They called all the Jews the Polish, just like here, the Persian called all the Jews the Yehudim, even though they were from a different tribe. But Rashi says,
Cuba. My son, who's now a lawyer, says he can't believe what he did.
What did I do?
Yeah. Well, he went unannounced, found the point, we went into a Cuban hospital.
Oh, yeah.
Walked in, we had a New York doctor, because
Judah.
And almost any country in the Soviet era, you just couldn't walk into government buildings or hospitals.
Yeah.
Arrested.
No, this was 20 years ago.
And he also the rabbi went to talk to a leading dissident. That's another.
Come on. The leading dissidents were,
Cuba, yeah.
they were dissidents with the imprimatur of the government. They weren't real dissidents.
They were still jailing dissidents.
In
2000.
They're still doing it probably.
Yeah, they're still.
So
It was an interesting thing.
anyway, so it was a very, very,
Right? Oh, yeah, that's where we went to visit the Jewish community.
I don't know. It was a very powerful trip. I don't know what. You see, when you go to
Now, but not long.
I will say this about the trip to Cuba. I've been to synagogues all over the world. Many, many different countries. The only country I've been to where there was zero security in front of the synagogue was Cuba. There was no fear of the synagogue being attacked. Because
It's a police state.
it's a police state. So you had no fear. You didn't have to worry about somebody attacking the synagogue. The synagogue was safe.
Yeah, that's what you get, a police state.
Yeah, the synagogue was safe because they knew if you attacked it, you were dead.
Yeah, they would shoot you.
And the Jews were safe there. I mean, as long as they didn't cause problems. What?
There's still a big community.
It's not. It's a very small community, very small, and most of the Jews made Aliyah. Like we're very suspicious. We're very suspicious about the Jewish community that remained, but now they're building it up again. Yeah, we'll talk about that trip another time. Anyway, so Rashi says he was from Judea, but he was a Benjaminite. But Rabboseinu Darshu Marsha Darshu. The rabbis gave a different explanation. What was the different explanation that the rabbis gave? The rabbis said that he was a descendant of Shaul, but he was a descendant of both Saul. On one side, he was a descendant of Benjamin, and on the other side, a descendant of Judah. That's what the rabbis say in the Gemara and Megillah. But
You're not
Rashi-
referring to the Midrash.
what?
You're not referring to the Midrash where the Benjamites claimed that he wasn't theirs, and the Judeans claimed that he wasn't theirs because of the embarrassment when he was not bowing down to Haman.
Right, they both wanted to turn him away. Yeah,
Right.
The Jews-
So that's another Midrash, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Gemara says they were all upset at him. They were upset with Mordechai for not bowing down.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the pasuk that we said. That reminds me of what we learned in the Torah. I wrote this in the Torah yesterday, or maybe last week. It says that the elders said to Moshe, "You ruined our reputation in the eyes of Pharaoh. Now Pharaoh's not going to like us anymore. The Jews were upset with Mordechai. Now Haman's not going to like us."
I just think he could have, if he had bowed down, all these Jews would have been condemned to death, right?
That's what they claimed.
Yeah, well, wasn't that?
Wow. Grab a chumash. Sit down, Benji.
Oh, that's all right.
He's got the OG. No. Show him where, Kobe, show him where a chumash is. Show Benji the chumash. Okay, so it says, Asher hagla miYerushalayim im hagola, Asher haglosa im Yechanya melech Yehuda, Asher hagla Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel. So again, this is the idea that Mordechai was exiled from Jerusalem. With the exile, hello, Ethan. We'll study tonight in memory of Ethan's mother. Her yortzeit is tonight and tomorrow. Please say her Hebrew name.
Leah.
I didn't want
Dina.
Leah about Dina. Okay, I will study, and I remember Ethan gave beautiful a spade. He spoke about how his mother was such a beautiful mother and wife to his father, and I'll never forget when he spoke at the Levaya. He spoke about how his friends used to come on Shabbos to his house, and his mother would warm up the cake, and it would be so delicious. And the Danishes, they come down on Shabbos morning. They come down on Shabbos morning. Yeah,
Thank you, Rabbi.
I remember that. Okay, so and I also never forget, basically 2 weeks before Ethan's mom passed away, she wrote a note to me, and she said, "I hear you're starting a yeshiva. I want to support the yeshiva and keep an eye out on my son." That's what she said.
Okay, this is a good mother.
She's watching.
Twice a year.
She's watching. She's watching you. And if you would miss tonight, I would be calling you. I say, your mom said you better be here. Okay, anyway, so he was exiled. Asher Agla, he was exiled. He was exiled from Jerusalem with the exile that was exiled with Yechonyah, the king of Judah, from Nebuchadnezzar. Like we said earlier, there were 2 exiles from Babylon. The first one was with Yechonyah, the second to last king. And that was where Mordechai was exiled. So what do we know about Mordechai? This is being written for sure after the destruction of the first temple. It's not 100% clear from the text. So the rabbis say that they started to rebuild the temple only after this story, but many scholars argue, not necessarily the rabbinic approach, but many scholars argue that the second temple was already rebuilt and Mordechai was remaining in Babylon. He was in a certain sense like us American Jews who are remaining here, even though Israel is thriving, there's a Jewish country. Like people might come back years from now and say, what are you doing here in this country when there's a Jewish state there and there's anti-Semitism? You can't go to an Ivy League university without somebody spitting on you for being Jewish, for being proud of Israel. And so in a certain sense, that was like Mordechai. Mordechai was in Babylon when the temple was starting to be rebuilt. So that's part of the question. Now we're up to the next text, the next verse, and it says, Vayi omein es hadasah. That is a whole question. What does this word omein means? He was raising hadasah, meaning he was like her guardian ad litem, right? He was her guardian, bastodo. He was her guardian. She was his niece. Now, are you allowed to marry your niece?
Yeah.
You just shook your head and said yes. Well, you can't do both, Benji.
Just listen to.
You say no. You say no or yes.
You can marry.
What'd you say, Jeff?
You can marry.
So it's interesting that by the Gemara in Yevamos says a man should marry his niece, but a boy is not allowed to marry his aunt. But today it's very rare, except when I first came to Ohav Shalom, there was a person there who was married to his niece, very prominent member of the congregation, and it didn't go well with the family. They weren't happy. And there's also a Nechama Leibowitz, the great scholar. She married her uncle, and he was like 20 years older than her, and the family disapproved, and they didn't talk anymore after that. Also, so it does happen. Today, I mean, like, I'm just saying it does happen.
Isn't there a controversy whether Esther really was the niece?
There's a question, what was the exact relationship? We'll pick that up tomorrow. We'll stop here. We have to have a mincha now. Shekoya.